in the startup world, like 1 out of 10 makes it. So that means 9 failed, because passion isn't going to make you succeed. Businesses aren't just like whatever boxes and products. Businesses are people. And as an individual leader, if success looks like, your ability to adapt and persevere.
Founders just run out of steam. It takes so much energy in order to keep a business afloat. That fuel is very easily burned up. I think founders also kind of assume that starting a business means that they're unlocking the key to ultimate freedom and flexibility and control over their time, when in fact, running a business is like having a kid. The kid's you gotta keep an eye on your kids 24/7, because inevitably they're always trying to hurt themselves. And running a business is like trying to keep something from killing itself over and over and over again, right? Because a business is always trying to jump off that cliff or run out of money or, crash and burn somewhere. And so you're always on damage control.
Most of the startups that we are going to see dying is because they were boring. Nobody cared. If you're unable to make people care about your product, to be booked, you're not going to have a business. You're not going to grow. You need to create customer choice. In order to create customer choice, you need to convince them of why you're better than the rest, why your solution is the right one for whatever problem they have, in the right moment, in the right place.
In the beginning, when you found a startup, you are on your own and you may not know where to start. You then research on the internet what you should prioritize, but you might very quickly come across a wide variety of programs for startups that can support you, such as startup accelerators or incubators that guide you through a structured process to create a startup and turn ideas into a product.
We at Detect Gene come from an academic background, which means we didn't know a lot about business or business development or how to hold a business pitch. Since we didn't have a background in business, we had to learn all of that. I would say that we could have done fairly well in giving scientific presentations, but for the most part, that wasn't required. And so we had to get our heads around what was actually being asked of us and then practice that accordingly.
The reason why brand strategy becomes important is because think of it as clay. You're building clay. And when you're building clay in this space of concepts, if your vision is abstract, if your vision is not concrete, if you don't have clarity as to who you are, your brand, who your users are, what your priorities are in terms of being able to define what provides revenue, what provides awareness, and what provides efficiency. What I see most when I walk into a company that is not doing well is that they haven't done that work. I ask, who are your customers? And well, it's this and this and this. Some of them is like everyone. When I hear a founder, CEO, or executive say, everyone is my customer, that's like a red flag.
There's like this weird trifecta that you have to establish balance within. We know about product market fit. The product has to appeal to what the market is doing, but then brand, your reputation also has to be good enough so that customers are going to trust you in order to buy the product. And if you're not balancing those three things, if you're not picking the right audience, or you're not providing the right product, or you're not managing your reputation in a way that's going to appeal to the audience, the business is going to fail. So many times I see founders, especially early on, think that they need to provide one thing to an audience that might not even exist. They provide that wrong thing to the wrong audience, and then they brand this business the way that they want to brand it, and then it doesn't work. And so striking that balance is super important.
Reduce the guesswork. Not knowing who's your ideal customer early on, it is a problem. So you need to try to define it as much as possible. Now, when you started in a business, the narrower you start, the better. So you convince a tiny group of people to gain traction and prove the value of your product. And based on that, expand it like it was an experiment. So if this worked, but we will expand it to whatever size or dimension, we can solve it. Strategy gives you the possibility to reduce the guesswork.
If you can find a group of people that all have a similar desire or, let's say, obstacle in getting to that desire that has not been met yet by anyone else. So if you found a gap, it's almost like finding a gap in the marketplace. No one has solved this problem, and there's a group of people that all experience the same thing, then there's potential for you to then fill that gap and create a product, a minimum viable product, let's say, to meet that need or that gap for that group of people. So finding that group of people, I imagine like one could just go to, where would those people congregate? I think, where are the watering holes? So where might these types of people hang out? Are they a part of certain industries? Do they go to conferences? Where can you find a group of people and then get to know them enough to see if there is a gap? If they are struggling with something that you can provide as a business, we have to know the customers. We have to know what they think and feel and how they communicate. If we never talk to them, if we never interview them, we're going to be putting a lot of assumptions into brand building. And then we might be not attracting anyone, or we might be attracting the wrong people that aren't going to care or not going to pay what we need to make this business run.
That's the worst. The best way you can start is by helping one person. The depth of understanding that you have for all the people that are going to be like them is massive. We can still run a hypothesis experiment on an absolute, what is it, a WAG, a wild ass guess. We can totally run wild ass guess experiments, but it's going to be a longer road to success than to start with one person and then 2 people and then 4 people. And then by the time you know 4 people and you've helped 4 people in your market, then you should have enough to build a persona that is reflective of the market. I think that that's hard work and it's not easy, especially finding that first person to help. But God, it's a superpower when you do it,
You should put your customer as the center of the brand at the center of your business. Write down who the best fit customers are for your future business or your current business. And try to understand their lives, their pains, their emotions. Remember that the buying decisions are emotional. There are studies that say that 95% of our decision making is subconscious. That means that when we buy something, there's something more deeper than just the rational part of our brain. Instead of thinking about a product and trying to bring customers, create the customer you want and develop the product and the services that you need for them to become that type of customer. I have dozens of examples of brands that do this. Cirque du Soleil educated us that a circus experience could be completely different. Nespresso, who educated us on a better quality homemade coffee. We all feel baristas, and we changed the way we relate with coffee at home. They developed machines, delivery systems, the pods and stores and everything for us to become home baristas. Not only that, they did it so well that some people put the coffee machines in their living room because it's a sign of sophistication and status, right? Not in the kitchen with the other appliances. So they created us as customers, and that's my advice on when thinking about core audience. Who's that and where are them?
We are aware that we have a lot of competitors because we are not the only startup working on solving this particular problem. But we are very open-minded about it. We also network directly with other startups. We talk to them to find out whether cooperation is an option, because other startups face many of the same problems that we do, and solving a problem together is usually much more fun. Of course, we also know that although we have competitors, we are unique in some way, because our product has a wide variety of functions that others do not. That's why we try to create a unique selling proposition in all areas so that we can distinguish ourselves from the various competitors and startups.
I believe that a unique selling proposition is essential for a company to stand out from other companies or competitors. This can be the price, or as in our case, the precision and preparation of the samples. And I think it's essential that we present that and always adapt that according to the market situation. In my opinion, a business's visual presentation has a lot to do with associations. Should we be able to develop a corporate design in such a way that the visual presentation of different touch points alone can be associated with the company without adding the logo? That would be another milestone that we would address in our marketing campaign in the future.
If you're looking to visually stand out as a brand among your competitors, there's two things that I can recommend. The first is conduct an audit of the brandscape, right? The brand landscape. And this is where you take all of your competitors' brands and you put together these big documents that allows you to look at the different elements all together. What's surprising is that you'll find patterns. I'll give you an example. One of my clients was a window washing company. I took a look at the brandscape and identified that every single competitor, literally 100% of the window washers that were their competitors in the geographic area that they served, used blue as their primary color. And so the decision was really easy. We wanted to stand out, and so we used green as the primary color. And so we are completely different than the rest of the market. By conducting that, audit of the brandscape, you can identify patterns and then you can tack the opposite way. Here's the other thing. Combining two things that don't necessarily go together. And we see this a lot with like hypebeast brands. These hypebeast brands will take two concepts that previously didn't marry and they'll smash them together in beautiful ways. And so all of a sudden you'll have an italic serif typeface hovering over an image of Goku from Dragon Ball Z. It's like those strange, funky combinations of elements can make a brand just really stand out because it hasn't been done before. And we see this with any kind of new design. Any aesthetic trend that feels fresh is simply a combination of two or more things that haven't previously been smushed together. If you can consider your brand and take a look at all of the attributes that define a visual identity and look for patterns that seemingly conflict, that don't necessarily go together or haven't in the past, and you can identify those where the magnets like try to push apart from each other. If you could push those magnets together, that's your standout brand right there. And you'll find visual identity in that space that just, it doesn't look like anything else.
Yeah, what a business can do to stand out from all of their competitors is to try to be distinct. And what I mean by distinct, showing up as yourself and just telling the truth of who you are. And a brand can do that too. So if we have a really good origin story of why the brand exists, and we have a really good reason of why we want to serve a particular type of person, why it's important and why it matters, all we have to do is tell that really well by the brand just being itself. Just like people, when we're ourselves, we stand out. That's all we have to do is just be ourselves. It's when we try to outdo our competitor or when we try to copy them because we think, well, that's what everyone's doing in the industry, so I have to do that too. That's when we start not standing out and we don't look like ourselves and we just do everything everyone else is doing.
So how do you start the process of creating a business from this point of view? You might have an idea. The best brand to even show as an example here is Liquid Death. Liquid Death is a water brand. It's water in a can. A 12-pack is like $15. It costs as much as beer. The packaging looks like a beer packaging. Murder your thirst is their tagline. So water is a commodity product. It's controlled by the big players, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, etc. Nestle is the big player in water. And suddenly you introduce something that says death to plastic. Who came up with that? So the founder is a marketing person, came up with this novel idea, didn't have any capital, but put up an Instagram and a website with all the models and the 3D stuff that he did with his team and friends, like if it was a real thing. Just built the company through kind of marketing and stunts. Didn't have all the connotations that water needs to have in order to be either luxury or better for you or alkaline. It was just murder your thirst, water in a can. When you put a can and you make it cold, it stays colder a little bit and you can put a cozy on it like a beer. But the water tastes so good. And you also feel better. You crush the can, you put it in recycling. Psychologically, you're not killing freaking sea animals, right, with the water because of the plastic pollution. So how do you start your new brand? You have to define why you're doing it. You have to figure out how it's going to be different and differentiated in the marketplace. So you have to create a brand personality. Doing a SWOT analysis, like what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What opportunities exist in the market? Who are you competing against? Looking at the competitive landscape. Where do you fit in addition to those things, then you have to have a roadmap. You have to have clear actions, prioritize of what you're going to do, what's first, what's second, what's third. And sometimes those things change. So you need to be adaptable.
There's traditional brands and there's personal brands. Traditional brands, the reputation and feelings that your company has. Personal brands, the reputation of a person. I think it's fascinating that we're starting to see something in between, which is creator brands, where it's not just the personal brand, because there's a massive business and there's like a whole media component into it, but it's just not your average brand that like people see a logo associate with those feelings. And there's such a rich range of creator brands that to me is fascinating from a brand strategy perspective. Using content just purely for marketing, like the idea of content marketing, to me, it's like going through life, just using other people for your own agenda. Like to me, content is communication through media, audio, video, but it's just like building relationships. And you do that because you believe and you invest in those relationships because they're your people, they're your community, your audience. You learn from them, they learn from you. It's an exchange. There's some nuances that are very unique to this type of companies. One of my favorites and to me the most important one is how they treat advertisement. And there's a gazillion brands that we know, like The Future, obviously Mr. Beast and the Beast Burgers and all of that, Chill Hub, all the creator brands that I've worked with, I've always asked them the same question. Do you spend a lot of money in advertisement and paid ads? And so far, I've always gotten the same answer. It doesn't work as well for me as I'd like to. Which means that to me, the more these brands grow and the more we see more of these brands, the less we're gonna see of traditional advertisement, if that makes sense. Because you don't need to pay for reach when there's people willing to listen to what you have to say. And that's a fundamental difference in how you build brands. And the brands that, even if they're traditional brands that start behaving like creator brands, I personally believe are gonna win on the advertisement game. Whether that means reaching more people, spending less in advertisement, or actually converting more. Because it just makes sense. It's like if you go to a street, someone gives you like a little paper for a restaurant. You're like, yeah, okay, whatever. But if your friend is like, oh my God, I went to this restaurant last night, it was amazing. You'll be like, oh, maybe I'll go next Friday. So this to me is like a massive change. And I think it's a very interesting one to be aware of. And that's why to me, content, when organic, when like mindful, is the most powerful brand building tool that we have today on the online space. If you haven't implemented a single thing, you're screwed, basically.
So if you start with the wrong foot, you lost them forever.
Learn how to embrace the unknown. That comfort does come through failing.